Welcome back to the Ace Talks podcast, where we talk about Ecuador and a little more. And today, we're going to do a follow-up on the education episode that we had last time, where I gave you guys my experience on education in Ecuador. But today, we're going to talk a little bit more about someone else's experience, because having my own experience might not be enough. So today, we're accompanied here by my good friend, Roberta. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I'll let you be the judge. So yeah, go ahead, say hi.
Hi, I'm Roberta.
And you might have noticed we're in a very interesting setting as well if you're watching this in the video podcast version. We are in the city of Rocafuerte, and we're going to hear about Roberta's experience with education and her thoughts on it as a whole. So, Roberta, tell us, what exactly was your school life here? What was your life as a student here in Ecuador? From as far back as you can remember, and tell us a little bit about, the positives and the negatives, the highlights.
Back then, you went to school, you started school when you were 5, but nowadays I think you can go to if you're 3 or 4, you can send your kid to school, but back then I remember you had to be 5. And it was normal. I started in a religious school. It was run by the father of the community. So the priest, he was the same. At the same time, he was like the headmaster of the school. And it was, like I said, really religious. I remember every day at midday at 12, a siren would go off from the fire department, and we would have to stand up and pray every day.
Interesting.
Yes, that was when I was in school. Yes, every day at midday, you stop whatever you were doing and you would pray a specific prayer, but I don't remember which one it was, honestly.
This was a public or a private school?
Well, it was, at first you could say it was private because you had to pay, right? But after a while, it became like a mix, we could say, because even though we still had to pay, we received help from the government because they gave us the books we needed. We didn't have to buy them anymore. So we still had to pay every month, but we didn't have to spend money on books.
And now that you mentioned spending money on books, how much do you tend to spend on books here, every year? Because I'm guessing you buy books every year.
Well, every school has different subjects. Like, I remember that in school we had to buy books for the English class and for religion. And of course, you had to have a Bible. And other than that, it was usually like a coloring book if you were like a little kid or something like that. So let's say maybe $40 back then in 2005, 2006. So yeah, it was around that. But in high school, it was more. I remember we usually had to spend around $60 to $70 on books every year. But that was also before my high school and other high schools started receiving help from the government with books. So then that stopped. That was only the first 2 years of high school that I had to pay.
Oh, all right. All right, well, sorry for interrupting. I just wanted to know those things. Continue. Tell us more about your life at school.
Well, like I said, school was more, maybe because you're a kid, but when I was a teenager, I switched schools because I started high school. So I made more friends, and the friends that I made in high school are actually the friends that I still keep to this day. So I would say that's not the only good thing, but that is something that makes me not regret studying there, because I made good friends and good memories.
But you have regrets. What exactly?
I do have regrets. Well, Ecuador is a very religious country, and my school was religious, and then my high school was religious, but you didn't really know what religion was until a certain point, not really. And then you start to discover that by yourself, and you ask some questions, but some questions cannot be asked when you are in a religious high school. You cannot question some things, and that is something that started to be like, oh, I don't like this. And then it developed more, and well, I stopped believing in God, but I wouldn't say that everything about being studying there was bad, because there were really good teachers too, people with values, people who were nice and kind to us, to their students. So not everything was bad, of course, but I would not recommend a religious education. I would recommend like a neutral education, like no religion at all. Oh, I remember something that is different from before, because when my mom was in school, she tells me that she had to go to school like in the morning and again in the afternoon.
Ooh.
And I'm like, what? And so they had to go 2 times a day. But that's different now, fortunately.
Thank goodness.
Yes. So I always think about that, and I think how hard it was back then to like transport yourself. And even then you had to like, even with that you still had to go. But nowadays it's much easier. And I always studied in the morning, so I followed that routine all my life, studying in the morning, both school and high school. I remember that we had to go to mass many times, and sometimes that was unexpected. Like you were in the middle of, let's say, social studies class, and then someone would come in and they're like, "We have mass in like 10 minutes," and we're like, and then you just have to go. But when I was in high school, sometimes they would be like, tomorrow is a festive day or something, we have mass, and then I wouldn't go that day to school.
Free day.
Yes, because I'm sorry, I couldn't keep up with the mass without falling asleep. It was like, and the priest back then used to speak really slowly.
Ooh.
So he was like, good morning, today we're going to talk about God. Really slowly, and everyone was like, what? So the mass was sometimes over an hour with kids, with lots of kids.
I can imagine. I mean, with schools, about how many students were in your school?
It was, when I was studying, it was only school, so from 1st grade to 7th grade, let's say 400 kids, maybe? I don't know exactly, but we had many students, yes. Like every classroom had like 30 students, so yes.
Oh, so you didn't have to go through the problem of having like oversaturated classrooms, because
No.
I mean, I've seen classrooms
And the
with 40
classrooms
students.
were also like spacious.
Oh, okay.
I remember that even with like 30 students, we still had like a space in the back, like to play or something. Like the school was big.
Not bad.
Yeah, that is something here that sometimes maybe older schools, they have bigger classrooms, but maybe the newer don't have, because maybe they have more kids and less space. So maybe.
That's pretty cool then. At least from what I remember in the States, there was never really an area in the classroom to like have fun. You just go to the playground for that. But definitely very different. I did want to make a tiny tangent, like very much not to do with your school, but since you mentioned your mom and like the past, you also have to think about, aside from the fact that there was apparently a double schedule that she had, I'm guessing they also had the difficulty of, not like us that we have phones, we have laptops, they probably had to go get their information out of a book in a library, so.
Yes, that is something that my mom says too, that they didn't have anything to like look up information. So they had to go to the local library. That is, I don't know if it still works, honestly, but I think the city hall has the books, some books, or they used to, but there used to be a library here in Rocafuerte, because she tells me that she used to like get information from there, some books, because of course she didn't have any access to, there was not even a thought of internet back then.
Internet, what's that and how do you eat it?
Exactly, they didn't even, that wasn't even a word, I guess, internet.
Yeah, I mean, over here even worse. I did realize that a lot of things took a long time to get here to Ecuador.
Yes.
But, okay, yeah, that was just a micro tangent, just something that I thought like pretty interesting to know about for some people who might not
I had
realize
internet
that.
we started having internet in our house in 2011.
It took a while.
That's the year we hired internet. Before that, no. And I remember my dad did it like mostly for us because we were studying, and he was like a gift, like, look at the computer, it has internet. And I remember I was still in school when that happened. I'm like, because not even then, not everyone had internet, and I'm like, what is this? Just the idea that you could look up anything was crazy.
Facts.
Like, I was always just like looking up excuses to get on the internet, because just looking up a word and reading the meaning was like, wow. All this empowers knowledge. Knowledge is power.
Well, we get what you're trying to tell us, but it's good. No, but that's just how you see how the way things progress over here. It's been kind of slow. But going on, I'm not sure if you want to talk a little bit about the situation with maybe extracurricular things like events, maybe sports, maybe other things, but still in school life.
Yes, I remember that this is something that pisses me off, because I remember
Aggressive.
that when I was in school, I've always been a good student. So okay, I've never liked to like miss class. I have to admit that. No, I don't like to miss classes, because I don't like to ask people for what do I have to do, because they never get it the right way. So I remember that they chose me, of all people, and another friend to play basketball. And I've never played basketball in my life. Why did they choose me? Because by then I was 11 and I was tall. And my friend, she was also tall, so two tall girls, you have to play basketball. And we were both good students, and we were both pissed, so we quit. And we said we're not playing basketball, we choose class already. But okay.
I'm pretty sure someone out there in the audience is thinking like, wait, what? You chose studying over sports? No, it's a good decision. It's honestly the right thing to do.
If I like the sport, the right decision would have been to like stay,
balance
right?
it out, right?
Exactly.
Like do both.
But the thing is, I didn't like it. But if you like it, there's nothing wrong with it. I just didn't. I'm really bad at sports, and I tried to play basketball, but I played like two games. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm so bad.
Just a quick clarification. There's no problem with doing sports while also studying.
Exactly. I think it's great, honestly.
It's really good.
You have to be really determined.
And organized
really.
In order to study and be able to do a sport. But it's pretty tough. And over here, honestly, the only way for you to really get ahead in a sport, and I think I mentioned this in my education video, like things you might not know about here in Ecuador, is the fact that there really are no school sports teams. Like, you play sports at school, of course. Like, you go to recess, people will go kick around a soccer ball, play basketball if there's a basketball court, because little by little they started adding courts and stuff like that, because mainly it was always soccer.
But it's not like a school has their own team or something. Like, I see that in the States, every school has like a team, a mascot, their own uniform, like everything. We don't.
It's really cool.
People just play, like kick around the ball, but not like, oh, we have our own team and we're competing with the next school. Like, there used to be competitions between schools, like among schools and different schools, but it was like, oh, just like our high school with the other high school. We wouldn't name a team. We was just like high school one with high school two, or school one with school two playing.
Those are the intercolegiales. We call them, the best translation I found for that is inter-high. And basically, like you said, it's one school versus the other school.
Yes.
And sometimes if it's a big enough event, because I have seen that they do it like nationwide, but I can't really say like if that does exist or not, because even when I was here in school, like we didn't make it to that level. Like I think we played, we didn't win, and it just kept going. And I've never seen anyone talk about their experience. That's why I mentioned in that same facts video that people, in order to get into sports, you go to the federation.
Yes. There isn't much motivation here for sports because, sadly, unfortunately, the government doesn't really help athletes.
Oh,
and Ecuadorian athletes have actually spoken out about it, because what they have achieved is honestly because they have really worked for it with no help from the government, and it shouldn't be like that. We need to support the people from our country who want to do something. We need to be there in any way we can, and the government especially should be there. But sadly, when it comes to sports.
No,
aren't.
it is tough.
It's
that's
tough.
that's definitely something we should talk about some other day
Like,
because it's a
they
big
are
topic.
brave people. Really, everyone who like chases after a sport. I really admire them, honestly. I'm really bad at sports, and that's, I think, another reason why I admire them. Like people who practice any sport and they love it. It's really great.
It definitely is. I always thought it was a great dream. Just I noticed over here it's not something that's easy to follow. Not unless you're like the top 0.01%. Because
Yes.
in that case, like if you stand out above the rest, then maybe you'll get like more support because you're more well known.
Yes.
And now with social media, you kind of like put this out in public, and I'm hoping that changes. But like I said, we'll talk about that in some other point. So now, moving on, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to mention about maybe events or things at the schools, like what you thought, because I did also mention that a lot of the times they do these different types of events, like
Veladas.
the velas, the novatada, olimpiada.
God.
There's a lot of events that go on throughout the year of a student, and like they do cut into class time. So like, what is it the same thing over here with the religious schools?
Yes, but I've noticed that it happens way more in schools that are not religious. But I remember that during my first 2 years of high school, I had to dance, and I didn't want to. Of course, I never wanted to participate in any activities because I just don't like them. And then I think the third year I said no more. And I remember that we used to like do the rehearsals during PE.
Oh. So no PE, but
no
rehearsals.
PE, and you're like, your, how do you say your nota? I forgot.
Your grade.
Your grade was, whatever you did with the dance, if you behaved correctly, if you were, I don't know. And then one year I just told my teacher, I prefer to work out and exercise than to dance. And he was like, okay, you're gonna work out, but he never actually made me work out. I just looked at my classmates dance around like assholes. Yeah.
I can imagine being in the position of the teacher, like, so, like, it's like, I'm not gonna say that you were in the wrong because you weren't, but it's like I understand,
It
like
should be a choice. They shouldn't force you
Of
to
course.
like dance all the time.
But the laziness, like, I can see the laziness of a teacher thinking, like, so for one student I have to give a class instead of, like, just focusing on, like, helping everyone do this dance. Like, I can see why he didn't, like,
Yeah,
keep
and
going
I
with
was a
you.
good student. He probably was like,
That's fine.
Just wait it out or something. And then they never, like, after some years, I think they stopped like forcing the students. I guess, but I'm not sure.
I mean, you should never force them in the first place.
My last years of high school, maybe because the earthquake happened and everything was different, there were not as many veladas. So I don't remember doing a presentation, honestly. The first 2 years, yes, but then no, I don't remember.
I'd say that right now it's very common thing, and we're actually coming close to the dates where they're gonna start doing the parades and stuff. So, but we'll leave that for separate because let's continue with this conversation. So, what do you think of the events, good or bad? Like in terms of looking at it from the perspective of a student.
Well, I think they can be good because sometimes the presentations were like typical dances and things that were interesting and that were connected to some of the things we were learning at the time. So it's a nice way to like also make the students become more interested, I guess. But sometimes, and I see this in many schools, it's like they're just making up new things to celebrate or to make veladas or something. They are celebrating even like foreign festivities all the time. And I'm like, how much money are they spending on costumes and everything? Because I see the kids always in different little things and I'm like, oh my God.
The parents.
Yes.
Poor parents.
And for example, my niece and my nephew, they are 4 and almost 3, my nephew. They are both in school, and I see that their school is all the time like making these events, and I mean, it's nice. It's really cute to look at the little kids in their little costumes. It's really pretty. But like every month is like new events, and I'm like, wow, it's really that necessary to be making events all the time? I don't think so.
Yeah, I also don't think so. I think it would be good, like if it were mainly open houses and stuff like that,
Exactly.
where you're showing the skills of the students and not so much just like, you know, an extracurricular thing. Because I do think having parents tied into, like family, tied into the education of their kids is important because kids are like, oh, motivated because of their parents.
Yes.
But if it's all just dances, then it just kind of teaches them that like the lazy things are what get attention and the really
Yeah.
important things not so much.
And sometimes the little kids don't even know what they're doing. They're just like standing there with their little costumes, like, or they're moved around by the teachers. And I'm like, I wouldn't spend money just look at my kid do that, honestly. But that's me.
Everyone's different, so you know if you're into that, then I
They
guess.
look cute though.
I mean, you can't deny that. They have to make them look cute because
Yeah.
they have to present an image so that their school looks good.
Just the other day, my niece was, how do you say morsa?
What?
Morsa.
The heck is that?
The animal, like, what's an animal? It looks like una foca, like a seal. And my nephew was a dog, but they look really cute. But it looks so cute though.
So you can't resist the temptation to
Yes.
see them like that,
Yes.
but you would rather them not.
Yes.
Okay,
Definitely. Just go to learn.
I get it. It's things that happen, you know. But moving on with this, now that you mentioned your niece and nephew, and since they're in school, and I'm guessing you went through the same thing as them in this aspect, and this is, I wanted to know your opinion, uniforms. Necessary or unnecessary? Because
Well-
they're a big thing here.
Yes, they are. I'm not against uniforms because they can be a way to like identify, like, okay, that student is from that school. And also because it's easier to just put on a uniform and not be worried, what am I going to wear tomorrow? What am I going to wear tomorrow? I think they're okay. And like if a school wants uniforms, fine. If they don't, fine. But what I don't like is when they become, when you're wearing a uniform, they don't let you like have a bit of like long nails, or sometimes they don't even want the girls to to let their hair down. Many times I was told like to put my hair up, like not have it like this because it was distracting. So there are many things like uniforms are okay, but some school, like the schools that have uniforms, they also like don't let you like have a, like for the guys, they don't let them have longer hair, or if a girl is wearing a nail polish. I was once wearing nude nail polish, not even I could see it, and I wasn't let in. And I'm like, okay, is that really important? Like uniforms are fine, but okay, do they really need to also have rules on like nails and hair and everything? Is that also the uniform?
Individuality is a crime, apparently.
Yes. And the ironic part was that it was always religious schools. Like Jesus had long hair, and the boys wouldn't be able to have theirs. They were always mad with ugly hair.
I mean, if they're all forced to
was
shave
always
it down,
funny
it's the same.
To see the guys like get to the classroom with super short hair, and they were like, and you asked them, and they were like, they made me, otherwise they wouldn't let me in. Sometimes they even had like scissors there, so they would like.
I did hear about that they would cut your hair at the school.
And nail clippers too for the girls, and nail polish remover too. Or they would make you go and buy some, and then go back, clean it, like remove it, and then you could go into your class.
It's pretty drastic.
Some people would just go home
But I mean,
and go and come back the next day, yeah, you know, with everything out. It was horrible. It was torture. Every Monday, I remember the inspector was next to the door for every girl. Let me see your hands. Let me see your face. Okay, you know.
I had forgotten. I didn't mention that in my facts video, but here in schools, they always have inspectors.
Yes. Oh my God, like, oh.
Can you explain the concept of the inspector for people who
An
might not know that
inspector
is?
is someone who is supposed to like go around the school, make sure that no one is doing something wrong, make sure that everyone is in class at the right time, make sure that no one leaves class before they are not supposed to. Like, if you wanna like skip a class and the inspector sees you, he takes you back, and they are also supposed to like inspect how you look to see if the uniform is like correctly worn, to see if whatever you had on you was like school appropriate. So that's what the inspector does, and he's always like walking around, keeping everyone and everything in check. That's my high school had two at some point. Yes, horrible.
I actually think every high school should have two. If that's what their job is, to like keep the order, which is they're pretty much that's what they're there for. Like, it's better to have more of them so that way they can distribute themselves better.
Kids always find ways to do something.
Tell me about it.
And my high school before the earthquake, it had like four floors. So sometimes the kids would like hide in the terrace and like be there and skip class. So yeah, 2 inspectors were needed definitely because it was a big place.
The usefulness of an inspector. In the States, I think the closest thing they have to that nowadays is that they have like a school cop, but they use that more for, there's worse situations going on in schools in the States. I'm not going for or against the situation with a cop at the school, but it's like, I can see why people would feel the need to have one, as long as they're doing their job correctly. I have heard of pretty severe cases where, maybe more in night schools, where there's a little bit older, like an older audience, older class. I have heard where there are cases where nowadays with this whole situation with the country, the narco and all that stuff, how there are people who go in to do these assassinations to the school, to someone who, might owe some money or might, be in, tangled in these weird things. So I can see that happening, and I can see how someone could get caught up in that. But in a normal school, it feels kind of, what are these kids doing to get themselves in that kind of trouble?
Yes.
So pretty sus. But I also wanted to go back a little bit and just talk about the situation with the uniforms and all that stuff, and like you said, the nail polish and the hair. I kind of try to find the point where I understand why they do these things, and like you said, maybe it really was distracting, or maybe they just wanted to eliminate every form of distraction. But at that point, you'd have to eliminate students from the classroom, because another student is enough to be a distraction for a student. So
if you want to be distracted, you're going to be distracted no matter what.
It's like they say when you're looking at a fly just fly around, or like a butterfly.
You just find ways to put yourself away from what's happening, from what the teacher's saying, I guess.
It's true. So going on with the next topic that I wanted to talk about, and it was that university here, because I also did get to mention a little bit about my university life. I personally studied in what was a public university, the UTM, here in Ecuador, and that stands for Universidad Técnica de Manabí, by the way, for the audience. But that university, like you would imagine, had its downsides. Free universities don't always come with their benefits. So you had some time, you've studied in the university, and you also had a chance to go to the States and have this kind of institute situation where you got to study there as well. What things did you take away from there that you liked, that you wish that were maybe different over here? And what can you tell us about your life at the university? Paid, not paid, was it good, bad?
Oh, okay, so I'm a college student at the moment, but before being a college student, I was also a college student from another university before I dropped out.
She's a college student, but she was also a college student, and now she's a college student.
Yes. And I was in a private university, and I remember that even though it was private and I like it, but the problems we always have with universities is that the bathrooms don't usually have water, or you don't find toilet paper or something. And that's something that happens all the time here, and it sucks because water is a basic necessity, and I remember that. But
how did I forget that? I should have talked about that too when I was talking about stuff that are different here, because Not only that, like they do sometimes have toilet paper, but it's because there's a lady who sells you the
Yeah.
toilet paper.
Well, in this case, no one sold us anything, but there were days that we had to wait for someone to like put new toilet paper, or there were moments when we didn't have water. And that's beautiful thing in the States. There's always water everywhere. So that's something that I was like, oh my goodness, there's this infinite source of water. And I remember that in school, most of the time, the bathroom didn't have water. That's in school. But in the States, what also something that I liked was that no one really cared about your appearance, like what you were. Maybe if you had a piercing, or if your hair was long, short, if you were wearing nail polish or something, there was no one talking about it, or like you cannot go today to class because you're not, I don't know, your nails don't look appropriate or something. So that's something that I liked. You could just express yourself the way you wanted, the way you felt best for yourself, and that's something that I liked because I think that creates confidence in you, and that makes you want to go to class maybe happier, because no one is how do you say restringir, restricting you. So yeah, so that's something that I liked about it. And also that there's students from many places, so you get to like know many cultures. I had some classmates from Brazil and from also Islamic countries.
Funny you should mention that. A friend of mine is studying right now in the States. Well, recently, because we also have a friend in common who's studying in the States, Diana.
Oh, yeah.
She's over there having the time of her life. Hello, Diana, if you ever hear this. And same thing from my other friend who's just now started studying. And one of the things that she told me about, by the way, hi, Salmita. She said she's having like this whole situation where she's like seeing a whole bunch of different people from different places. The English barrier is kind of a little bit tough still to overcome. She's good at English, but it's like a barrier that you still feel, because it's different to be good at conversational English, like we talk and we have a conversation. And then there's the whole technical aspect, the speed that you hear from native speakers. It's completely different.
And the accents also of the place. Sometimes just because it is a country that speaks English doesn't mean that everyone speaks the same.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say something, I forgot what it was.
Sorry for interrupting that thought.
Oh, yes, that when I was there, and like I said, it is good to always have new people from different places of the world, because they change your perspective and you become more humble and everything, and it's more open to the world. I remember that I have this, the first day that I was studying English in Valencia College in Orlando, I remember that when the class finished, we went to the cafeteria to grab something to eat, and we were talking, and I had this classmate who was from Saudi Arabia, and I touched his shoulder like this, and everyone looked at me really in a weird way, and I'm like, what happened? And they said, don't you know? And I'm like, no, I don't know. And then they said that in his culture, men and women cannot touch unless they are family, like you're my brother or my boyfriend or my husband or my father, maybe my uncle, but you cannot, different sexes cannot touch. So that's something that I learned that day, that gave me a lesson that you should like always ask or learn a little about someone's culture, because you cannot just assume that their culture is the same as yours, because something so basic for us, like Ecuadorians and Latin people, we're always touching and hugging. That's something different from someone, and it's always like humbling experience, but at the same time you see that the world's so big and diverse that it's beautiful.
It's something that you wouldn't notice if you were just stuck here in Latin America.
Exactly. Like that was wow. I've never forgotten that.
A lot of people
He was
find
a
it
nice
surprising
guy.
coming here as well, like the whole saying hi with a kiss on the cheek.
Oh yes. Oh god.
That's
yes.
culture here.
That's culture here, yes. Like you go to a family gathering and there's 40 people, and you will most likely have to kiss all of them.
I mean, not kiss, but you know, You know, kind of like, it's like you touch cheeks.
Yes.
It's
Not a kiss, but
Kiss, kiss.
And we're really like, we also hug and we're like, oh, I hadn't seen you in a while. How are you? Whatever. We're really like, ah.
It's okay, Roberta. I've seen you. We just saw each other the other day as well. Okay, but being serious, there's a lot of differences there, and this all this is really interesting in the aspect like there's a lot you learn when you actually get to experience the other side of the culture because like you said, you wouldn't have known that probably if like you wouldn't have met this person and like you would have known like, oh, you can't touch him like that because that's his culture. And a lot of people might learn the culture here, you know, interacting with the people here. But that leads me to an interesting question because I'm sure that the majority of everyone who listens to my podcast episode and people who come to retire to Ecuador, they don't normally come with their kids. But there are people who retire early. There are people who just are tired of the life that they live in the States because it is expensive. And I'm pretty sure everyone who's listening to this, even if you disagreed with a lot of the things that we've talked about or you didn't like something, you gotta accept that right now the States is expensive unless you're, I don't know, earning over six figures. But like for the most part, it's hard to earn that, and it's hard over here. Worse, like we don't even thinking about anything over four figures is pretty crazy.
It's yes.
but the point being, someone who comes here is looking for a different opportunity. So even if it's not to retire, maybe you just want to travel and live here in Ecuador and see what it's like and see if it might be better than the States. And you might come with your kids. So you personally don't have kids, but you have your niece and you have your nephew. So assume you had the opportunity to either choose between letting them stay here and study here in Ecuador, or you could take them to any country in the world, any first world, because we have to accept we're living in third world country, like everyone, except this isn't me insulting Ecuador, it's just everyone accepts this as a reality. This is third world. If you had that choice, would you take your children to study somewhere else, or would you have them study here? Or in the same way, it doesn't even have to be you. Like if you had a friend who told you they're living in some first world country, the United States and somewhere in Europe, and they're like, hey, should I bring my kids to study in Ecuador? What would you tell them?
No.
Wow, direct.
Because I mean, if I had the opportunity to take my niece and my nephew somewhere else so they can, I would, because I know that there are countries with education systems that are different and are better, and they are more broad, because I think that here the education is very limited. We almost always learn the same things, but we don't really focus, we don't really learn something. For example, we are Ecuadorians, but we don't even know one of our official languages, which is Quechua. They don't teach you that. And my point is that you can find good schools here, and that also is, education also comes from your parents, because if your parents encourage you to learn, you're not going to be just settling with what you get at school. You're going to be trying to learn more from different sources, because right now we have different sources to get information. And sadly, in Ecuador, the education is not the best, especially if you are in a public school. And like I said, it's really limited. The world's so big, and it feels like the world's like this, and we're only studying a small part of it. And I think we should know it whole. We should know everything, a little bit about everything. And also, they don't teach you about things that you are actually going to need when you become an adult. Like when you go to a bank, what do you do? If you want to buy a house, what do you do? If you want to, I don't know, do something with start a business, what do you do? You don't learn these important things at school. So I would not exactly invite people to come here and study. If you have the opportunity to go and have your kids study at a different place where you know the education is going to be bigger and better, and there are also different ways, like we talked before. For example, we don't have like clubs or the sports. It's not encouraged here, so education shouldn't just be limited to books. It should be different things like sports, financial education, nutrition. How do you take care of the planet? How do you start a car? I don't know, many things, you know. And we don't really have that. So I wouldn't recommend it if no. But that doesn't mean that there are not good schools in Ecuador or good teachers, because there's always good teachers around. And I've learned many things from good teachers that I've never forgotten and that I will never forget, because they knew how to reach the students. And that's why I say that there are good teachers here. So there are good people who are willing to give good education, but sometimes it doesn't depend on one person. If the whole system doesn't work for the same cause, it's not gonna happen. And sadly, it's not happening yet. So I wouldn't recommend it.
It's a very interesting perspective to give when you talk about this whole situation with studying here, because like you said, it's not going to be every school that's bad, but like if you had to give it a general idea, like this is what is the reality. And there are also, of course, really good institutions here, like universities that are obviously paid and more expensive, have more opportunities, but it's not always how good the school is or even how good the teacher is. It really depends on the person, which is why I really did like that she made a mention, Roberta, you made a mention of the family aspect. Yeah. Parents who encourage their kids, the kids are more likely to be better in the future than parents who aren't there in the lives of their children or their child if they only have one. So it's factors that you have to take into consideration when you talk about education.
It also it depends a lot on the person too. And it reminded me of a quote from I don't know who exactly said it, and that it was, I didn't let school limit my education, which is important because we have information all around us, and it's up to us whether we want to learn it, whether we want to be better for ourselves too or not. So in family, like I always had my dad telling me, like, you have to study, or encouraging me to learn new things, not only like stay with what they give you in school. And many kids don't get that, sadly.
Everyone's life is different. Just if you happen to be in this situation, you have kids, as teachers actually, be there for your kids. So that way, no matter where you're having them study, even if it's here, like not saying it's bad, but you know, like we did talk about, it's not the best. If you're there, their education is going to be much better than if you weren't. So just our humble recommendation.
Yes.
And that's what we wanted to talk about today. Go a little bit deeper into what was education here. Talk about some of these things in regards to education, so that maybe if you were planning to come and study or send someone to study here, you have a better idea of what it's like. And yeah, I appreciate you taking the time, Roberta. It's not every day that we get this chance, this opportunity to record like this.
Roga fuerte.
Roga fuerte. And we will be talking about this city as well in the future, maybe on a main channel video. If not, maybe we can deep dive in a podcast episode. We'll see what the future holds for us. So, anyways, I appreciate it. By the way, your mic is really in a weird position. I don't know how that's going to affect the sound, but thank you very much for listening to us. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Ace Talks podcast. We hope to be back at a later date. Stay tuned for future episodes. Take care, and as always, Ace out.